Hello and a warm welcome into the show. Great to have your company. Coming up this week, Nickie Scriven, CEO of Zenith Media, guiding us through this week's media headlines, including news that the government now has temporarily dropped its broadcast media licence. Plus, this week's television ratings, State of Origin taking out top spot, but find out who else came in its wake. First off, though, for you this week, News Corp Australia unveiling details of its news prestige network. Let's guide you through some of the detail on all of this and the audience that it's aiming to cater to. Nick Smith, no stranger to the program over the years. Smith, Prestige and Lifestyle Director for News Corp Australia. For many years, indeed, was also Editor-in-Chief for GQ Australia and publisher for some of the group's magazines. So, preeminently qualified to delve into this topic, joins me now. Warm welcome to you. Let's just talk about brands coalescing around this idea. What gave birth to it, and what are we expecting from it?
Yeah, well, we've obviously got a very strong portfolio of prestige brands. So something as strong as The Australian, with its group of assets like Wish Magazine or Mansion, which is now into prestige property. We've got Vogue, GQ, Vogue Living. And we've also got a really rich distribution into affluent areas through our community mastheads, such as the Wentworth Courier in New South Wales or the Bayside Leader in Victoria. So we had this strong ecosystem of brands. And we've also seen that, you know, Australians are now, I guess, the most sophisticated luxury consumers in the world. So
is there that kind of sense that this sector almost sails above the talk of recession and you know, reticent consumers? There's almost a kind of it's a them and us. Yeah,
that prestige market in Australia is fairly buoyant, and I guess probably recession sort of safe, if you like. Right. So we've got this influx of Asian, I guess, tourists. High rollers, which are doing a nice job of propping that industry up. But also over the last 10 years, luxury brands have really invested in Australia, and some say, you know, the lights are on in terms of prestige in Australia. So local consumers are actually really buying into brands.
Is it something that's migrated effortlessly to digital, or it's still more comfortable in the glossy pages of the front of a GQ, for instance?
Look, we're in a pretty great space because luxury brands still love that positioning in print, so that beautiful double-page spread when you open Vogue or GQ, they really like that for awareness and impact. But what we're seeing as luxury brands move to digital, there's this requirement for safe brand environments, which we can deliver, but also more scale. So they want to reach an audience. So it's not necessarily about just aligning with, say, a Vogue or a GQ when they go digitally. They just want that audience, which is just really important.
And what's the typical campaign length? And indeed, what are they basing these around? Is it still a seasonal kind of flavour to it, or are they likely to go with events like a Formula One spurs a whole lot of activity?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things to your point. So obviously, and different. Besides, you know, depending on which category. So obviously retail is very seasonal, so fashion is autumn and spring, so we rely on that, so that's good for our fashion brands. Obviously auto requires them to be a launch, so and that's really short burst. When there's a new model from a Mercedes or BMW, it's all on. And then other things that luxury brands do, as you say, they get behind big properties, so big sponsorships are key. And we've got a lot of experiential platforms at News Corp, such as Vogue Fashion Night Out or GQ Men of the Year, which brands are really getting behind now.
The sustainability of the digital side, though, because, you know, still in its relative infancy compared with print, what say you to kind of measuring this? I mean, what do you benchmark it against? Because you're not really comparing like with like, are you? If you're making a comparison to the print campaigns and then a sort of a digital overlay. So what's the kind of
look, it's very important for prestige brands when they go to digital for them to, I guess, have the click-through. And, you know, not many luxury brands in Australia have their e-commerce sites that they own. So usually if you might, or previously if you might go to a Louis Vuitton site, you'll end up at the US e-commerce site. So gradually, I guess, they're being geo-targeted, so they'll be able to accrue the revenue that when people are buying on those sites to their Australian businesses. So we're finding the conversations when they are going digital, it's like, well, how can you help drive people to my e-commerce store? And that's the best way.
Because there's something interesting, something like, you know, the Chanel brand and then the boomerang that sort of screams Australia. Which is kind of somehow, you know, it crosses continents.
Absolutely.
To a certain degree, doesn't it? But you'd almost like to think that that could be the genesis of the Australian kind of through train for a wider selling option there.
Yeah.
But perhaps that's almost the start of it.
Absolutely.
One component out, heroing that, maybe going from there. But I mean, have we seen something like that really resonate, or
look,
something that's uniquely Australian, but within the broader, say, a Hermes or a
exactly
an LV?
So I mean, these are global brands, right?
Yeah,
but they're realising the need to localise, and they're doing that through storytelling, and that's where we can really help, because obviously we do that every day through Vogue or GQ or The Australian, and wish, you know, our power is telling stories to an Australian audience in a meaningful way. So while they've got these global campaigns which are sent out from Paris or head office, we're finding more and more that these luxury brands really need to engage on a local level, and that's where we can help them.
How do you then use the influencers, and what's the duration equally of their life cycle in terms of, you know, the influence from any given standpoint?
So influencers are amazing. We think that it's almost then like pop stars.
Right.
So you might see one go right off, and then sometimes they might kind of overcommit themselves to brands, and so, you know, you might see them kind of sort of fall off in terms of their authenticity, and authenticity is key in luxury.
So is there a growing consensus as to how many brands you can juggle as an influencer without dropping the ball, to your point?
Absolutely. And to that point, we've aligned with an exclusive arrangement with Scrunch, which is a technological platform which we can give them a brief, and they can use an algorithm to go into social media channels and find almost a grassroots influencer around a particular topic, and we can engage them and run content campaigns for an advertiser. So we're actually going probably not for the superstars, but the ones that we could probably grow, work with brands in more effective ways.
And how long has that relationship with Scrunch been?
So that's
gestation?
It's new. So we've probably been working on that for about 3 to 4 months. So we took that to market with the launch of News Prestige last night in Melbourne, and the night before in Sydney. And it's an exclusive thing. So it actually takes the risk out of influencer marketing, because our brands also have strong social media followings. So we can actually take this new grassroots influencer and amplify their content through our own social channels.
You talked about click-through. When do you make the determination that the influencer is perhaps overrated? To an extent, you know, they're creating awareness, but there's not that final transactional link that you can, you know, draw back to.
And look, sometimes there is a bit of risk when you do, I guess, engage an influencer, and that's when a relationship with the client is the best thing. So with this new partnership with Scrunch, we could say, I guess, propose, say, 10 influencers to work with, and we might start and we might test and learn. If one doesn't work, we'll put them in or take them out, and, you know, roll them over.
Right. What gives you the passion to be doing this day in, day out? What gives you that drive, that commitment?
That's a big question. Oh, look, I've been working with these brands for around 10 years now, and I guess, you know, News Corp has supported me very well, and what we've been able to do is take something, or a brand, say, particular, like GQ, we took it from like a quarterly magazine, and now it's pretty much a behemoth in terms of premium men's lifestyle. So it's got like a calendar of events, it's got a big marquee event in the GQ Men of the Year Awards, it's like a monthly magazine, a great website, and a great social audience. And we can, what the passion, where we get the passion is that knowing that we can resonate with audiences and get them to do something.
I mean, Alistair Campbell did a brilliant one-on-one with Tony Blair for the UK edition.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, is that the sort of thing you could drive down under?
Absolutely. Like, so, you know, GQ particularly, I don't want to go back to that singular brand, but we've had Malcolm Turnbull on the cover, you know,
of course,
Tony Abbott's actually appered. Next month we've got Barnaby Joyce.
All right, so driving regime change from the covers of GQ. I mean, who would have thought? Yeah, Nick, well, good luck with it. Yeah, but you tread a kind of a delicate line there between, you know, of course, currency and, you know, daring to go where some say you shouldn't fear to tread or should fear to tread. Thank you so much. All the very best with it.
Thanks for having me on.
Prestige and Lifestyle Director for News Corp Australia there, Nick Smith, no less. We'll take a really short break. From Nick to Nickie, Nickie Scriven, our CEO of Zenith, joining me at the desk after a short break. Thoughts on this week's media headlines, plus a little bit more about Zenith Media itself in just a minute.
Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither while they pass, they slip away across the universe. Trying to
is full of hidden treasure, just waiting to be discovered. So look a little closer and see what others don't. Join Expedia Plus Rewards today and discover member pricing and more.
Cooking can be so easy. Marley Spoon sends seasonal ingredients and tasty recipes directly to your door, making it simple to whip up a delicious meal at home. You decide what, when, and with how many to cook. We send all ingredients pre-portioned, and using our step-by-step recipe cards, you can have dinner on the table in just 30 minutes. Try now at marleyspoon.com.au and get $35 off with code TV2.
Fame's fickle. While some are celebrated, others go unrecognised. Take the traffic light, saved so many lives. But whose brainchild was it? Yeah, whoever thought of roasting coffee beans? The mobile phone, who was the inventor? What about Wi-Fi? Any ideas?
You don't have to be famous to be brilliant.
Skoda. Simply clever.
Stay at the 66 Hotel in Seminyak, Bali with luxury escapes. Your 7-night stay includes breakfast, daily cocktails, exclusive dining experiences and more. $999 per person, twin share, valued at over $5,000 for two. Visit luxuryescapes.com.
Here at Open Agent, we take the stress out of selling your home, helping you find an agent you can trust to sell your home the easy way. And the best part is, it's absolutely free. Simply visit openagent.com.au and type in your postcode to instantly discover agents in your area who have sold homes like yours and know what they sold for. Next, compare agent reviews.
I got 20% more than the original evaluation.
Now that's what I call a stress-free sale. You can also personalise your search with a call to our research team standing by to make your experience even easier. No wonder 60,000 Australians visit Open Agent each month to effortlessly sell their home. Remove the guesswork and let Open Agent do the hard work for you. Sell your home the easy way, the stress-free way, to secure the right agent and best price for your home. Call or visit openagent.com.au.
Welcome back into the show. Time to chat with Nickie Scriven, CEO of Zenith, with me in studio. So we'll get Nickie's take on this week's headlines. But first, Nickie, warm welcome to you more broadly. Let's just put Zenith in play now. Talk to me about clients, where you sit inside publicists, and indeed what the future's looking like. I mean, in terms of the roster of influence and sectors that you see as being to the fore next financial year. Here we are about to start it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. So Zenith is the ROI agency. We're an agency within the Publicis Group. So in Australia, that's over 300 clients that we represent, about just over 1,000 people across Australia. Yeah. And we're responsible for about 4 billion circa of advertising revenues per year.
New clients recently, including in the auto space, the likes of VW. So talk to me about just how you craft campaigns that are, in a very crowded market. We always hear, car sales, second biggest to housing here. What do you sort of get your inspiration for? What are the brands themselves saying they want you to bring to the fore to really mark them out as distinctive, to drive these, the next phase of growth?
Yeah,
What's
sure.
it about?
Well, firstly, Honda is our auto client within Zenith. Look, I think the biggest challenge at the moment has been the shift in the media landscape. So it's really no longer about just pushing messages out to audiences through channels, if you like. It's more about understanding the consumer experience and really driving connection and engagement with consumers. Yeah. So the work that we're doing with Honda is really understanding that journey. We don't think in funnels anymore where you're just trying to pour people in the top and then, hope that some stick as they come through. It's really about understanding where people are sitting on that consumer journey and designing communications strategies and campaigns that are going to connect with them and move them through the process.
And would you say that the consumer is radically showing a different tendency to how they were, say, 5 years ago? What would you say today's audience primarily comes down to? What are the buttons you're needing to push?
Well, look, obviously the media landscape has fragmented enormously. So instead of having 5 to 6 main channels to play with, we've now got hundreds. So actually reaching people is a lot more challenging than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
And therefore you see the likes of programmatic advertising come to the fore so that we can reach more niche audiences at scale.
And typically, when we think of programmatic campaigns, just for the uninitiated, walk me through what that typically amounts to. What are you referring to there?
Well, if you have a look at the digital landscape, it's incredibly complex, and there's more and more channels arriving every day. So we have some main channels that we might work with, a News.com, a Fairfax, a 9MSN, and so forth. But then there's so many other niche players and content providers in the marketplace. So it's really important for us to start communicating with people that are in the right place at the right time, and we use a lot of data and analytics to do that. Programmatic advertising helps us deliver that at scale and simplify the process. So it's really probably the simplest way to understand it is biddable media. So we would have an array of options available to us. We would plug in the demographic data and the attitudinal data with the audience that we're trying to deliver, and then machines do that for us.
Gosh, quite incredible. I mean, the take-up of that would be roughly what percentage of clients prepared to spread the risk across those multiple channels, or is there still a preference in some regards to saying, look, I'm going to stick with X and Y, because that to me is where our target does sit? I mean, are they, in other words, are they willing to embrace and outsource a lot of the analytics, as you've referred to them, to yourselves?
It really depends on the client and their objectives. So if we take the auto example, you're still seeing, about 50% of advertising expenditure going through TV channels. Increasingly, we're seeing more and more go into digital, so at about 26% now. And then the split between what is programmatically bought and what is premium bought, again, varies on clients and varies on client objectives. But, we anticipate 50% of advertising revenue this year will be in digital environments. So it's a huge growing area.
Speaking of TV, let's just sort of segue from that, Nickie, into some of the news of the week, because there's a kind of a key link to all of this. And we've had this week, notably, media companies welcome the government's scrapping of broadcast licence fees for the current financial year. Nine itself saying the temporary removal of that 3 3/4% TV and radio fee is set to add some $33 million back to the bottom line. That'll only boost full-year earnings to anywhere between $200 and $210 million. Similar welcoming calls from Southern Cross. They say they'll be in line to save some $12 million. And Prime Media only this Thursday upgrading their full-year profit guidance to $5 million more than expected. Of course, this fee cut coming during a tough time for broadcasters is expected to help Ten's prospects when it comes to finding a buyer. Because here you think, Nickie, of, again, programming and keying off that. I mean, here we have the big bash with 10, but there's also some contestability around that. A deal must be done by year end, and you've got the sense that maybe a resurgent 9, spiritual home of cricket with it. I mean, a whole slew of advertising flying that way. If 10 were to lose it, I mean, do you get a sense even from your perch as to how finely poised this one is and what's at stake?
Look, I think all of the TV networks would welcome this news because it allows them to not just create some savings and take that to the bottom line, but to invest further in their production. We know that local content is key in this market. If you have a look at all of the ratings, which I'm sure we'll do shortly, you'll see that, it's sport is one of the prime ratings winners. It's locally produced reality TV and locally produced drama as well as news programs. So, absolutely fundamental that they've got the ability to invest in their platforms and their programs.
Because with 10, this has been somewhat of the conundrum, wasn't it? Until the, until the administrators swooped, that had almost this noose around their neck over foreign content and a package deal, quote-unquote, deal with a small d maybe, because here you were trying to put, a square peg into a round hole, proverbially, over, will this appeal to a domestic audience? What's been, otherwise a US-centric tranche of programming. It's been a really tough one to sell, hasn't it?
It has, and I think the whole landscape has changed. If you look, the output deals were so fundamental, you know, probably even 5 years ago. But with content being available to be downloaded, it's the locally produced content that's really rating in the Australian market now. So a fundamental shift to where we were 5 to 10 years ago, where it was all the all the programs coming out of the US that were rating.
Some executive moves to remark on now, and Pandora founder Tim Westergren departing as the service indeed quits Australia and New Zealand. So just talk to this one. I mean, for the uninitiated again, Pandora, what sort of a loss is this to the local suite of, I suppose, products that are out there?
It's an interesting one. The Australian market is small relatively to the US, if you like, and our ability to sustain multiple providers in a space is somewhat challenging. So in this market, you've got Apple with very, very deep pockets. You've got Spotify, who's growing double revenues year on year, and Pandora, who are holding firm where they were at half of the revenue of Spotify. So it doesn't surprise me. You know, eventually one has to give. I think what we're seeing is some great new emerging media, but after a period of time, they've got to show that they're sustainable. And, you know, the message from Pandora was that they wanted to, you know, refocus in the US.
Fair enough too. Well, speaking of a US connection, the US debt giant Oaktree Capital, we've just touched on 10, but now reports that it is coming into play in a concerted way, maybe as a bidder. So, I mean, there's clearly contestability around who might own the beleaguered third player, if you like, in free-to-air. Is there a sense that still 10 could put up the barricades to everything we've just talked about, go strong on local content, champion that, even maybe offer something inside Domain, the jewel in the crown that we haven't yet perceived of yet, in terms of a further way of monetising and building out that brand, that could just actually see it withstand any suitor? I mean, what are you hearing? What's the chatter?
Look, Oaktree was certainly involved in taking on some of the debt of Channel 9, so they know that space. I think they know how to turn a network around in this market and then sell it for a profit. So, yes, a viable contender. I think it'd be unlikely to see it move from Gordon and Murdoch, to be honest.
I mean, speaking of 9, I mean, there you have David Gingell saying, look, to your point before, 10 could have a bright future if they champion local content.
Absolutely.
So is that almost a kind of a... Do you think it's wishful thinking this late in the game, or they could still...
No, I don't. It just depends, you know, the sort of price that is paid for it. You know, if they pay over the odds, then it'll be having to pay itself back, and that'll be a challenge. If they buy it at a good price, they'll be able to invest in good content. I think where Channel 10 has had the biggest challenge is that the landscape has moved to, rather than a destination for content consumption, consumers have become content hunters. So you need multiple channels to serve that content and, you know, follow the audience rather than claim a destination.
Well, how does that apply to ratings? Let's pull up some viewing stats in the last week. Well, it's all down to one thing and one thing alone, really, isn't it? If you look at this, Nickie, as we go through State of Origin, then get to some news, then a little bit of build-out from that, House Rules, what to make of it? 7 News again, features True Story, Hamish and Andy.
Yeah, I think this is, it plays to the point that I said before, where it's about sport, sport and more sport. So you've seen, you know, the rugby do 4 million people, which is just phenomenal. So what that really shows me is that the audience is there. We've just got to excite them with the right content, and the content that excites them is sport. News will always rate well. It's always in the top 5, top 10. Day after day, and then local content. So Hamish and Andy is a great new format, and it's drawing an audience, which is great. And then you've got the tried and tested House Rules.
To sport itself, the top 5 now animating onto this one: Sydney v Essendon, Western Bulldogs v Melbourne, Roosters v Storm, Raiders and Broncos, and Adelaide and Hawthorn. So pretty much Fox Footy, Fox League is the only game.
Footy and more footy.
Yeah, non-sport. Take a breath. Wentworth, M Suicide Squad on Premiere Grand Designs. That's kind of a perennial one, isn't it? Hard to shift. It'll be there somewhere.
Everyone loves it. If you can't afford to buy a house, why not dream about creating one?
True, on a Sunday night. And then Stalks. I mean, do you lay claim to watching everything, Nickie, or do you kind of have to be...
If only I had time.
What do you default to as your kind of your veg out, you know, preference du jour?
I'm a big fan of The Voice. I do love it. I love music, and I love being inspired by fantastic talent.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and I just love to chill out on the couch when I've got a moment. So I'm actually one of those late night viewers that really should go to bed and quite get there.
Yeah, insomniacs are us. I can, to a degree, relate to that. Nickie, thank you so much and all the very best for the next chapter.
Thank you so much.
CEO at Zenith there, Nickie Scriven, no less. And that really is where we find ourselves for this week. So do join us in 7 days. But for now, thanks as always for your company.